You finally get an offer accepted. You're thrilled, already mentally placing your furniture and picking out paint colors. And then the home inspector hands you a 50-page report detailing every single flaw in the house. It's overwhelming, and suddenly excitement turns straight into panic. That panic is especially dangerous when you're looking at flipped, older homes. A fresh coat of paint and some new quartz countertops create a turnkey illusion, making it incredibly easy to overlook failing, decades-old infrastructure hiding just behind the drywall. It's hard not to fall in love with the charm and curb appeal of a classic mid-century neighborhood. The emotional pull of these homes is strong, and sellers count on that aesthetic to gloss over systemic age. Every home inspection report acts as a clinical list of symptoms. Every house has them, even new builds, and they require objective categorization to understand the true health of the structure. Our goal today is to strip the emotion out of the process. We are going to categorize these symptoms so you know the exact difference between a weekend DIY project and a massive hidden liability. This flowchart illustrates a framework I call the deal breaker matrix. As you review your inspection data, every issue gets filtered into one of three distinct paths. You accept it as is, you negotiate a credit, or you walk away. Forcing your inspection report through this strict logical filter shifts your mindset. You stop acting like a vulnerable, emotional buyer and become an empowered, objective negotiator. This chart shows exactly how to weigh those defects. We plot the cost and effort to fix the problem on the vertical axis against the nature of the defect on the horizontal axis, ranging from easily fixable to completely unchangeable. We'll start in the top left quadrant. This is the high-cost fixable trap, and it's where major core infrastructure problems live. For example, an older roof might not have any active leaks right now, but if it is at the end of its life, insurance companies can flat out refuse to cover you or cancel your policy a few months down the road. Replacing it is a $10,000 to $20,000 hit. The same logic applies to legacy heating and cooling systems. If you're looking at a unit from the mid-2000s, there is a very high chance it runs on R22 Freon. R22 was phased out and discontinued. If that older unit springs a leak or breaks down, a technician legally cannot just recharge it. You are on the hook for a total system replacement, which easily costs another $10,000. And while you can at least look at a roof or an air conditioner, some of the most expensive traps are completely buried, like the plumbing beneath your foundation. Older properties frequently have cast iron sewer lines. When those begin to fail, accessing them requires heavy machinery and tearing deep into the earth. Cast iron pipes reach the end of their lifespan at about 50 years. Repairing them requires heavy jackhammering through the concrete slab, completely destroying the interior floors just to reach the buried lines. These infrastructure items are technically fixable, but they require massive, immediate capital expenditures. If you don't have severe cash reserves ready to deploy on day one, these flaws will bankrupt you. Now let's look at defects that escalate from expensive repairs to outright health, safety, and environmental hazards hiding inside the walls. This includes discovering active termite damage in the basement rafters, or finding out there's a discommissioned oil tank buried in the yard that might have leaked decades ago. Sellers will often try to brush these off by offering a flat financial credit at closing, telling you to just handle it yourself later. But issues like extensive mold or asbestos are incredibly dangerous to take on. You cannot simply lay a new floor over asbestos tile and hope for the best. To actually fix these issues safely, you have to hire specialized, licensed professionals to set up total containment zones. The final bill for that work scales completely unpredictably. You almost never know the true extent of the damage until you start ripping open the walls. A small patch of mold could reveal systemic rot spanning the entire house. Accepting a fixed credit for an unknown hazard is a trap. You are letting the seller transfer their unlimited financial and legal liability directly onto your shoulders. Moving over to the right side of the matrix, we find the defects that absolutely no amount of money or renovation budget can fix. This starts with the property's topography. It is crucial to visit a house on a heavy rain day to see exactly where the water flows once it hits the ground. If the street's drainage naturally funnels water straight down the driveway, it will pool against your foundation or completely drown your septic field. And you have to look beyond the property line. Environmental factors like overlapping flood zones, a loud train at 3 a.m., or a hyper-restrictive homeowners association are permanent fixtures. When you buy a house, you are also buying the neighborhood. Your single property is permanently locked into the exact rules, layout, and topography of the wider grid around it. This chart shows exactly why these go into the unchangeable column. These are the ultimate walkaway deal breakers. You cannot outspend bad natural water flow, and you definitely cannot renovate your way out of a bad location. So how do you put this into practice? You have to map this matrix directly against your own financial reality and personal risk tolerance. This table breaks down 3 specific buyer profiles to determine exactly who should walk away and who should stay and negotiate. First is the turnkey buyer. If you are emptying your savings just to cover the down payment and closing costs, you lack post-close cash. If the seller refuses to fix high capex infrastructure flaws, you must walk away. Next is the value-add investor. If you have the capital, you treat those expensive fixable flaws as powerful leverage to drastically drop the purchase price. But even investors draw a hard line at unchangeable location issues. Finally, the long-term optimizer. If you plan to live there for 20 years, you focus heavily on vetting hidden operational efficiencies, like ensuring the HVAC is properly sized so you aren't circulating mold through the ductwork for decades. There is no such thing as a perfect house. The numbers just have to align with your specific timeline and available capital. Keep your emotional attachment separate from the math. When the matrix reveals a liability, walking away preserves your capital and prevents a $20,000 mistake.
All right, let's just jump straight into this explainer and demystify the entire home inspection process by really looking at the anatomy of a house. If you're gearing up to buy a home, you've probably been wondering exactly what actually goes on during that critical due diligence period. Well, today we're going to break down the incredible detective work that goes into a professional home inspection, pulling insights directly from master inspectors and real estate pros. I always love to start with this question. What is the absolute biggest red flag hiding in a house? Because, a seemingly perfect, freshly painted home can hide some pretty massive structural secrets. Master inspectors have literally seen it all, from floors that have dropped 3/4 of an inch to giant termite colonies just munching right through a structural 2x6. Your inspection is, for sure, your very last line of defense against accidentally buying a massive money pit. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the house's general practitioner, the anatomy of the inspection, diagnosing major red flags, and we'll wrap it up with the post-inspection prescription.
Okay, diving into Section 1, the house's general practitioner, which is all about understanding exactly who you're hiring.
During that typical 10-day window you have to check out the property, it is absolutely crucial to know the exact role of the person you're paying to walk through it. Honestly, just think of your home inspector as the general practitioner of real estate. Just like your doctor during an annual checkup, they're performing a thorough 2 to 3 hour physical on the house. They know a lot about the roof, the foundation, the plumbing, but they aren't going to open up your drywall to perform specialized surgery, right? If they spot an old, outdated electrical panel, they're going to flag it and tell you to call a specialist. It's exactly like your family doc referring you to a cardiologist.
Now, what's really interesting is the cost. You can expect to pay somewhere between $400 and $600 for this. And yeah, I know it's an out-of-pocket expense for you as the buyer, but to put that into perspective, this tiny investment is your ultimate safety net. It's a wildly small price to pay for peace of mind when you're making what is likely the biggest financial investment of your life. And whether you're buying a brand new build or a century-old home, the inspector is going to adapt their approach because both have entirely different profiles. Take older homes. They were often built way more robustly. I mean, back then, a 2x4 was an actual true 2 inches by 4 inches. They're usually sitting on crawl spaces, which gives inspectors and plumbers amazingly easy access to get under there and fix things. Newer homes, on the flip side, are definitely safer when it comes to strict fire and energy codes. They usually sit on slab-on-grade concrete foundations, which gives you way greater structural stability. But the downside? It severely limits access to any plumbing or electrical buried underneath. Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of the Inspection, documenting the health of the home.
So there are some really strict boundaries to what they evaluate. Your standard inspection is going to cover the structural foundation, the HVAC, the roof, general electrical, the usual suspects. But there are hard limits here. If you want to deep dive into the pool system, a seawall, or if you need to know if those bees in the wall are just regular honeybees or Africanized killer bees, yeah, you absolutely need to bring in a specialist for that. And your inspector will let you know when it's time to make that call.
The actual precision of their documentation process is pretty fascinating. These folks don't just wander around snapping blurry iPhone photos. They use very strict visual frameworks.
When checking a roof, they document their ladder positioned exactly 3 feet over the gutter for safety. They physically chalk the metal on the gutters to prove whether hail damage exists. They verify drip edges, and they'll even measure the exact width of your downspouts, literally checking if it's 3 inches or 4 inches, just to make sure the water is being properly diverted away from your foundation. Inspectors actually have this great little motto: let the age set the stage. Knowing exactly how old a house is instantly tells them what red flags to hunt for. If a home is hitting that 25-year mark, they already know a standard tile roof is probably on its last legs. If it was built in the 70s and is pushing 50 years old, their radar immediately goes up for dangerous aluminum wiring, which is a known fire hazard, or old cast iron drains that might literally be rotting from the inside out.
All right, let's get into the really juicy stuff in Section 3, diagnosing major red flags, where we spot the invisible threats and deal breakers. I absolutely love this quote from Master Inspector Toby Kendall. He points out that as a builder, almost anything in a house can be gutted or fixed. But a sinkhole? That's a massive void under your house created by dried out aquifers. As he so hilariously and bluntly puts it, getting swallowed alive is where he draws the line. Now, obviously, that's an extreme example, but it perfectly highlights why structural integrity is the absolute most important thing. Think of inspectors as highly trained detectives. They are looking for subtle, everyday symptoms that reveal massive underlying illnesses. Sure, a tiny crack in the foundation might just be normal settling, but if you can fit a dime into it, major red flag. Doors that don't close right or have an uneven gap at the top, that screams structural failure. They even analyze human behavior. Things like a strategically placed rug in a weird spot or a random dehumidifier running in the garage, which is a massive tell for recent water damage. And if they look up and see dust pouring out of the AC vents, they are immediately hunting for mold in the ductwork.
What's truly wild is how they find the things you literally cannot see. To find a hidden bee colony buzzing around inside your living room walls, they use infrared cameras to pick up the heat signature of the hive packed between the studs. To prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, they'll recommend smoke tests on AC handlers mounted in the garage to make sure no car exhaust is leaking inside. And here's a gross one. If a vacant house smells terribly like body odor, they immediately check for dried out P-traps in the plumbing. Without water in that trap, raw sewer gas just slips right up the pipes and into the house. There's another terrifying, invisible threat we absolutely have to talk about, and that's radon. Radon is a radioactive gas that naturally leaches out of the earth, and according to the EPA, it is the second leading cause of lung cancer. What's completely shocking is that 1 out of every 15 homes is just sitting there with elevated, dangerous levels of radon trapped inside. The only way to know if your family's future home is safe is to test for it. $20,000 to $30,000. That is the massive gut-wrenching bill you could be facing if you have to tear up your brand new floors to replace 50-year-old corroded cast iron pipes. This is exactly why inspectors highly recommend running a camera down the plumbing cleanout all the way to the sewer tap. Skipping that one simple camera check could literally cost you the price of a brand new car. But inspectors aren't just protecting you from Mother Nature. They're constantly protecting you from previous homeowners. They find the most insanely dangerous DIY fire hazards. Master inspectors have shared stories of finding people using a literal metal Florida license plate to hold up a hot recessed light in the attic, or jamming chunks of 2x4s into an electrical panel to prop up a failing breaker. I mean, these are just massive, catastrophic fire hazards waiting to happen. Okay, finally, Section 4, the post-inspection prescription. Let's talk about how you actually negotiate these repairs. So the inspector finishes up, and now you are holding this massive 45-page diagnostic report. What do you do? Well, armed with these findings, you basically have 3 clear paths forward using your inspection contingency. Number 1, you can ask for repairs, which means the seller has to fix the major safety issues before you close. Number 2, you can ask for a credit. Basically, the seller gives you cash at closing, so you can just hire your own trusted pros. Or number 3, you can take the house as is if the issues are really just minor. Of course, if the house has a failing foundation or those crazy electrical hazards we talked about, you can simply use that contingency to walk away entirely and save yourself. And I really want to emphasize this rule. The goal is not a perfect house, because quite frankly, there is no such thing, not even in a brand new ground-up construction. You're going to find something wrong with every single property you ever look at. So don't sweat the small cosmetic stuff. Keep your negotiations focused purely on major health, safety, and the structural envelope of the home. I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on before you sign your next real estate contract. If your absolute picture-perfect dream home was secretly hiding a $30,000 plumbing disaster or a massive fire hazard, wouldn't you want to pay $500 to find out before the house was yours? Knowledge is absolute power, and when it comes to buying a home, your inspection is the ultimate safety net. Always, always get the inspection. Thanks for learning with me today on this explainer.